Okay, it says we're now streaming live on YouTube. I just have to wait for my computer to catch up so I can mute it on here and I can see comments. There we go. Therefore, if anyone is joining us live, feel free to type in the chat, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on the chat box too while we're talking. So welcome. Here we are to Goddess Vibrations, the Spiritual Sexual Empowerment Show. It's an MLK Day special. And I've got my friend, John Conyers III. He is the son of the longest serving African-American congressman who fought for many years for civil rights, for human rights, and actually introduced the legislation for MLK Day immediately after he was assassinated, and fought for 15 years after to actually get it passed. And I think it's just a testament for some of the stamina and passion and drive that your dad had. And I also see that those qualities in you after knowing you the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And maybe say a little bit about kind of what you were doing when we first met and what you're doing now, and what lights you up about all of this topic, channeling righteous anger.
Yeah, so we met in 2017. At the time, I was still working in the music business. I was still a songwriter. I have since founded 2 companies, left one of them, even though it's still going. One is Palette Agency, which is entertainment adjacent. It's a creative consulting firm. And then now I'm full-time at my hedge fund. That is the first minority-owned hedge fund in the history of the city of Detroit. We have about $60 million under management, and I'm back in Los Angeles because we are financing films. So that is how I found myself back out west.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And
Happy to be here. Thank you all for having me.
And when we first met, you were here working on, or I think filming some portions for a documentary that was being made on your dad's contributions, and now he's passed, and I'm very sorry to hear that. I know that we spoke right after that happened, but I'm really just in admiration of everything that he's accomplished and everything that he's done. The more I learn about him, the more I'm impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's something that has definitely been, it's still in the works, actually. So before he passed, he started working on an autobiography and a memoir, and so now it's kind of become my project to finish. And so his agent now represents me, and we're finishing up the proposal to make it a kind of a combined memoir. So that is kind of what I'm working on aside from the film business.
Very cool. And I know that throughout the years, we've kind of touched base on different political topics. We had some discussions during the whole Me Too movement and some of the women's empowerment things, some of the, just the ways that the world can be oppressive to women and can be oppressive to Black people. We've had those conversations as we're witnessing these social changes, right? And I think when we first met, the hot thing was Me Too. Now we're back at BLM. So we're just kind of trading off where the spotlight is going. And I feel like during that time in 2017, I had a couple men, and a couple of them also Black men, friends of mine, who were they had something to say about some of my posts when I would express my anger, not at anybody, but I would express my anger about the unfairness of things sometimes, and I can only speak from being a woman. So my own lived experiences, my own personal experiences. And I had one gentleman say to me, you shouldn't come off so angry. Be like MLK. Like he was graceful. And I thought he was a very angry man. He had righteous anger. He had a right to be angry, and he funneled it into action. He was not trying to ostracize anyone. And I feel like I was not doing that either. I was simply expressing a righteous anger about things. And so that is I think we have a hard time hearing, we have a hard time tolerating the anger of women, and we have a hard time tolerating the anger of Black people, and we have a hard time tolerating especially the anger of Black women. And so I just think that this is an opportunity perhaps for the world to see this and start to shift the way that they hold that space perhaps.
Yeah, I think for any person, whether a black man, I mean anyone really, I think it just comes down to principle. Um, when you're most of the time when people are angry at someone, or people tell someone who's angry that they shouldn't be angry, they should somehow be calm
Or
in the
soft.
face of anger, or some transgression, is simply to make them feel comfortable with whatever they feel entitled to have done. Does that make sense? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So like, if it's the Me Too movement, men say, men being angry that whether it's my dad, no matter how you feel about my dad, whether it's my dad, whether it's any other person, whether it's what's his name, that got the senator that left office, um, Democrat. I can't remember his name right now. But no matter who it is, it's not the issue is not, you know, how they were handled, although that may be part of it. The fundamental issue is the circumstances that either put them in that situation, or the structure that enabled, even if it doesn't necessarily apply to them, it's a miscommunication about the circumstances, or a different interpretation of what happened. There's a structure that's in place that would enable a person to feel lesser than, to even identify with the movement that's going on. And your anger should be directed towards the structure, the structural issues, not the person who feels that they are a victim and feels that they have been transgressed against.
That is such a monumental shift, right? If people
Absolutely.
could actually see that, and because that is what it is. It's anger at the system. It's anger at the way the business as usual. It's anger at the good old boys club. It's anger at, whatever it is that's going on, rather than a whole broad group of people, or a whole broad, or like the person that is in front of you, or whatever else. I think it's so hard for all of us to navigate, and myself included, being a therapist, being trained as a therapist, helping people heal, gone through my own trauma, healed, learned how to heal my own trauma. It still hurts when I see people hurting, and when I see people in pain, and when people are throwing daggers at me, through their own projections and whatever else. So if it's hard for me, I can imagine how hard it must be for the average person who has not done any kind of trauma healing work, or has not been to a therapist, or that sort of thing. And I see that just pervasive all over the world right now, with people just flinging mud, and not really, um, the anger is okay, but like you're saying, it's like, where does it land, right? Where are you
Hmm.
aiming it at? And so I think that's really important, because it does have to be expressed too.
Yeah,
It has to be
absolutely.
expressed, and it has to be heard.
It has to be expressed and it has to be heard. But the people that, like, I think, whether it is white people the American society, or if it's black men in our communities, right? We have to recognize the power that we do have, and not address the symptom, but address the root cause, and actually take the time to do the work to get to the heart of the matter and understand what's going on. Right? A lot of times, what happens is something goes on, everybody gets energized around, again, the symptom, and they're not doing the research to address the root cause, which is why you have so many, is why you ultimately have people that will follow Trump when he just says these things on the surface that are the issue,
Hmm.
when those things don't address the underlying things that have been building for the past at least 50 years, since the 70s, right?
Hmm.
So that's the issue. We're not actually addressing the root causes. We're addressing symptoms.
And I have some colleagues, some people that I've worked with for many years, that when I post social justice things in my story or my Instagram story, they sometimes give me a little pushback. And one of the things that I reposted lately, was a friend had said, "This is the epitome of white privilege, when this man dressed in a Viking costume can actually get to Nancy Pelosi's office without getting killed," right?
Mhm.
And And so I reposted that. This other colleague posted, well, they don't people that are on this side are fighting for corruption, against corruption. Like there's so much corruption, and that's what we're fighting against. And blah blah blah, whatever. And I said, I hear you. I hear there is corruption, and there's corporate corruption, there's pharmaceutical industry corruption, there's government corruption, there's all kinds of corruption. I hear you. And that has been going on for hundreds of years for certain people and people of color. And now that it's affecting white people, you're ready to storm the Capitol, but you're forgetting to first honor your teammates. Like, let's get all on the same team first and recognize what's been going on for so long. And then hopefully we can all fight corruption, right? We can all
Right.
fight injustice. And it's so hard for people to get on the same team
Oh,
lately.
no. But so I think that's the thing that we call cognitive dissonance, right? So there's a tweet where someone tweeted, I don't know if you know about the app Parler, but they were recently banned from every Amazon, Google Play, Apple Store, right? They were banned from, there's no way to use the app now. And so someone tweeted, the Parler app is back, and a person posted, please take this down. This is misinformation. The Parler app is not up. I just tried to go download it. So what I'm saying, when I say that, to say that, like, when it is things that directly affect white people, um, and their issues, they fully understand and can articulate why misinformation by a certain person is harmful, right? But
Mhm,
when it comes to people that don't look like them, that they don't feel are deserving, then it doesn't matter. And
mhm,
so until we address again the root, and the root is, why do you feel entitled? Like,
right.
why do you feel entitled? Why do you feel that you're better than them? Why
Mhm,
do you feel that this group of people is not deserving? Why
mhm,
do you feel that, like, as someone who is also poor, why do you feel it's a problem that we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? What is making you believe that these things are problematic? And part of it is the belief that, like, I'm not going to help poor people because eventually one day I won't be poor. But in reality, that doesn't help you in the
mhm,
right now. It doesn't help your children. It doesn't help your friends. It doesn't help anyone. And what's more is, like, you pay taxes, and it's your money. The government as we've seen, can afford to take care of citizens, to pay for certain things. That doesn't mean that you don't work. That doesn't mean that you don't have a job, right? But there are just certain things that every human being is entitled to. And I
basic.
think that as Americans, we delude ourselves in thinking that, like, somehow getting assistance is shameful, or that someone is not deserving, or we are not deserving, and that's just
Mhm.
false.
And I think that there's this, and yeah, cognitive dissonance is huge. Like that, I agree. And I thank you for pointing that out. I see that as well. And it's a human phenomena. I know, being in the psychology field,
Mhm.
it's, I understand how that works. I also understand how systems work. And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of people who, in fear, cling to the old, the way that
Mhm.
it's always been. And like you said, why is there this entitlement? Well, because that's how it's always been, is a disparity, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
if it works to even things out, it's like, but that's different from how it's always been. It's worked fine for me, but like, what about the people that it doesn't work for?
But
Like,
it's not
can you,
working for them anymore, though. That's the
that's
thing.
true, is that's
It's
not right.
not working for
Why
them
they're
anymore.
storming the Capitol, right? And that's
It,
the whole, yeah.
but again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. It's not working for them anymore, but they're addressing the symptom and not the root cause. You're blaming illegal immigrants for why you don't have a job, when in
Mhm.
reality, again, the entitlement piece is,
Yeah.
you don't feel that. It's a couple things. One, Americans feel like, after the Industrial Revolution, they feel like they're entitled to these jobs that are going out of. There's not as many of them because of automation. And number two, they're
Yeah.
blaming immigrants.
Yeah.
But you feel entitled to these jobs, and you feel, but you don't want to do the work that actually comes with those jobs. You feel like
No.
you're
Right.
better than, or above doing that type of work. And
Mhm.
then when an immigrant comes to do the job, you're saying they're stealing your jobs, but you're unwilling to work and do those jobs. But the point is, you may be able to work, you may be willing to do that job if it was actually paid at a certain level,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But you're not holding your representatives to the fire to get that minimum wage because you feel like that is uh, you don't deserve, people don't deserve money for unskilled labor. So it's like it's cyclical, right? You're not
Yeah.
addressing the root. You're blaming someone else. You don't see, like, your people aren't seeing how it affects them. It's just it's a never ending cycle, if you will.
And then you know, what really struck me is listening to Andrew Yang during the campaign trail. You know, when he was still running,
Hmm.
because he really broke it down as far as the tech. You know, he always, his joke was like, I'm a math guy, I do math or whatever. But he broke it down and he said, you know, the way that industry is going and tech is going, you, and we know this more than ever, especially on Instagram and Facebook, they're taking our data. You know, that's like untapped, that's colonization right there. So we had
Hmm.
white colonizers that came, they took the land that they wanted and they said, screw you. And now the tech industry
Yep.
is doing that to all humans of all colors. They're like, oh, you have an iPhone in your hand. Okay, well, I am going to take all of that rich gold, which is your own personal information, and use it
Hmm.
for my benefit, and you know, create these systems or whatever to profit off of, that I profit off of, not you. And so Yang is saying, well, that's why we should have a universal basic income, because the tech companies then get taxed for that. They pay you for the data that they're taking. And so when you said there's enough money, that's it. He gave us a solution. But people are
Hmm.
like, oh, you know, and he's talking about this these self-driving cars and self-driving trucks, and everything's get, you know, even little things like that are going to be automated. And so yeah, those jobs are, they're not just, they're irrelevant, they're going away. I got into an argument about with a distant family member about this right before lockdown, and I was like, the jobs are going away, like the economy is gonna, you know, go away anyway. And he's like fighting me, and then a week later we're all down in like lockdown, people are losing their jobs, whatever. I thought, gosh, the irony. But I appreciated that perspective because it's very just systemic. It's looking at the big, like you said, the root causes, and then offering some solutions to get out of this this poverty place, this oppressive place that we're moving into, just generally as a society, beyond, you know, the more historic forms of oppression of Black people, of people of color, of immigrants, that sort of thing. And yeah, I appreciate what he had to say, and I fully believe that the solutions are there, but we're too busy fighting with each other. And it's the fear, it's the
Very
fear.
true.
People are,
Yeah, it's definitely the fear. It's definitely the fear.
so you grab onto, I mean, think about it. I know you only have one brother, but I grew up in a big family, so if I didn't wake up in time, there was no breakfast. You know,
Right.
like, so I chose sleep or food. And then most of the times I would choose sleep. And I wake up and I go to school without anything to eat because the cereal is all gone. Like everything,
Hmm.
my brothers beat me to it and had 6 bowls because they knew there wasn't going to be much. So they're like, try to shovel it in, you know,
Right.
and that's like a very immature way of thinking about resources, or thinking about when there's not enough, you know what I mean? So it's, I see that happening now in society. It's like not enough, so I, you know, I got to get mine, I got to fight for mine. And not realizing that there is enough. It's
Absolutely.
redistributing it, in
There's
my
a, not only is there enough, but I think people overestimate what they need.
opinion.
That's part of the problem as well. Overestimating how much you actually need.
Hmm.
Um, but I think one of, and just to go back and touch on something aside from UBI, my father introduced a bill every term until he retired, the Humphrey Hawkins Full Employment Bill, which, especially because of our crumbling infrastructure in this country, will put people back to work. You know, from building high speed rail, fixing up our bridges, repairing our roads, fixing up the current um, uh, train system. Right, right. That's just something that we can easily do. Um, but we don't. we don't prioritize things that actually help our citizens or put our citizens in a position to be successful or secure financially. So that is it's troublesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, circling back around to the topic, which is channeling righteous anger. Obviously, we're talking about some white anger now, or just general anger for, now that it's hitting even more privileged levels of society. But what does your dad say? What did your dad say about how he was able to keep fighting and to actually fight for 15 years to make MLK Day a holiday and not actually, you know, give up on that? Like, how did how did he keep his resilience?
Well, my dad's a Taurus, so that
Ah, okay, I
so,
get it now. I'm a Taurus.
so that was gonna be the case anyway. My dad's gonna do what he wants to do, regardless until it
Yeah,
happens. Either he's gonna die or it's gonna happen. It's one of the two
yeah.
things. So
Okay.
um,
He must be a May Taurus.
yeah, it's May 16th.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
Uh,
about right.
um, so yeah, he's just hold on. I gotta plug up my laptop. So him fighting for that was a no brainer. But also that's what I mean. That was his dear friend. So it wasn't really. Um, it wasn't something that he was going to not fight for. I think one of the things that people don't actually speak on, or I mean, he gets a lot of credit for it, but the bill that actually passed was not his bill. It
Mm,
was another black congresswoman. Um, it was Katie Hall, a freshman congresswoman from Indiana. And so my dad, again, being a Taurus,
mhm,
um, was very adamant that it had to be on Dr. King's birthday.
mhm,
And so there's American law that any holiday is celebrated on certain holidays, if it happens over the weekend, is celebrated on the first Monday, or they're all celebrated on Mondays.
mhm,
And so he just obviously, it being his friend, and I also think the distinction is important to just make it MLK Day versus celebrating his birthday. I think that celebrating his birthday is a much bigger statement about his work and his contribution than just saying, "Oh, MLK Day."
mhm,
Um, so yeah, it was just that was he wasn't gonna quit. It was just a no brainer. Like that's my friend. I got permission from Coretta. I called Coretta and I made it a point to get her permission, and I'm gonna fight. Excuse me. I'm gonna fight to make this happen.
mhm,
Yeah. So that's all it was, and I think my not I think my dad said many times that he believed that Martin Luther King was the greatest human being he'd ever known,
yeah,
and one of his dear friends. So it's just, I mean, what would you do if one of your friends was, if you had the power or the authority to, do something on his behalf and honor him, make it so that the whole country, entire country, forevermore honored him or remembered him, you would probably do a similar thing.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's the heart, and again, being a Taurus, I totally identify now. I see that aspect too. And your dad actually ran for vice president in the 70s, right? Like,
So yeah, he was a part of. What's funny is my dad would have been the first. He would have been the first African American vice presidential candidate, but Edward Kennedy got in trouble.
mm,
Edward Kennedy got in trouble um, with there's a movie about it actually. He was having an affair, and the woman he drove he was drunk. The woman drove he drove his car off a bridge or something like that. The woman died, and so like it was a scandal, so it took him out of the race.
mhm.
Yeah,
So they were running together.
yeah.
I see. Okay. And that, as early as the 70s, he must have been facing a tremendous amount of racism and backlash, and even to get to that level, has he talked about what it took to get there?
Yeah, no, that wasn't that. I mean, he never. Those things never really. Just like I don't really talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. It's not that they're not important to me,
Mm-hmm.
but if you know what the things are, it's nothing to really talk about, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
for him and for me, the way he taught me, there was no conversation to be had about racism because we both acknowledged that racism something
Just
that existed.
every day.
So
Yeah.
it was much more so about doing the work. He often told me, what you do is you take it day by day, take it step by step. All you can do is you do little by little, day by day. That's all you can do. You can't do anything more than that. Like you can't live tomorrow today,
Hmm.
and you can't live yesterday and future. So all you can do is just just take it day by day. You don't build a wall. You can't build a wall or fence with 20 bricks. You put one brick down and you
Hmm.
put the next brick down.
Yeah. I get that. Even, growing up, my mom worked in a man's job. She was a firefighter and she worked for the US Forest Service. She also worked for the government and she was a timber marker. So she'd negotiate sales with loggers. And this is in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin. These are
Mm-hmm.
very um, you know, literally like backwoods guys. And
Mm-hmm.
that she's dealing with, on a daily basis. And they do not like being told what to do by a woman who's in this, at least some sort of position of power with him or against him. And she really taught me, that I could do anything that a man could do, but I'd have to work 3 times as hard. And that's that, she instilled that in me. So it's kind of like, you can have all this, you can,
Mm-hmm.
there's this glass ceiling though. It's like you can
Yeah.
have all of it, but you're gonna have to do the work. It's not gonna come easy. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to really work for it. But I appreciate that. And that's what I did. That's what I did all through high school, all through, even when I got into the workforce. I also became a firefighter my first, when I was 18, and while I also was waiting tables. So I was experiencing, like sexual harassment and all of that sort of thing as a server. And then I was experiencing a whole different level of sexual harassment being the only female on an all male firefighting, wildland firefighting crew. So those experiences, just have always given me a lot of compassion for other people who are dealing with oppression. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get that piece anyway. There's
Yeah.
obviously things that I can't understand being born in this white female body, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's about having these conversations, in my opinion. And like you said, I get it, because even during the Me Too movement, there were male friends of mine or even family members that are like, I never knew that happened to women. Like, I never knew that happened to women. And it's like, we just don't talk about it. It happens so often. Like, why would we bring it up? So I hear you saying the same thing. I get that, I get
But
it.
it's also, here's my thing with that. I agree with men. I think there's a lot of work that has to be done on the part of men of all races, right? And that thing is that we didn't know it happened because the behavior that allows it to happen, we think is acceptable. We
Hmm.
think the way we speak, the way we behave, we think that is acceptable, right? And it isn't. And if and it the fundamental issue is that we think things, oh, because it's I'm a mother, I wouldn't want that done to my mother, but it doesn't matter if it's your mother. That person is a human being, and
Hmm.
until we see humanity in every person, whether you're black, white, male, female, transgender, whatever the case, not, but it doesn't matter. Until we see the humanity in folks, it's not gonna, there's always gonna be the oversight.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true. And I think a lot of it, and I can say this just growing up in a really small town, is just ignorance. And it's not even willful ignorance. That's really hard to deal with. It's just ignorance, not having contact or not having relationships with people of different, different diversity checkboxes or
Mhm.
whatever. I remember going on a retreat with my dad, and he thought that this woman that was on the retreat, who was a friend of mine, who was this very beautiful Australian woman,
Mhm.
he thought, he's like, oh, I think she's flirting with me. And I was like, Dad, she's not flirting with you, she's a lesbian. Like, she's just friendly, like, but he loved her. He literally just thought she was the coolest person that he ever met. And from that day on, now on Facebook, he's posting about all these LGBT like support things and like
Yeah.
gay rights things and like all of this stuff, because now he's had this personal experience, right, with this lesbian woman. And I just feel like if we all had more opportunities to have those interpersonal connections, and we have to be, open to do that, there's so much healing that can happen. And I feel like there's that. And then it's also in these systems, these institutions, like you're talking about, having these anti-racism education, having like the anti-rape things that are happening at colleges. Being a Gen X woman, I've
Hmm.
had millennial men, like I've told them stories of things that have happened to me in my college days, which again are very common, that have happened to almost every woman that I know of my generation, where you're constantly fighting off unwanted touches and things like this. And I've had millennial men say that was like pretty much rape, or that was like basically rape. And I'm like, wow, I speak about empowering women. I speak about healthy sexuality. I am a freaking therapist with 3 degrees, and
Hmm.
I still did not acknowledge or really fully understand that the situation that I was in was not 100% consent, or I guess I did understand that it wasn't full consent, but I did not even think to put it in the um,
Maybe category.
spectrum of
Maybe-
rape, right?
Right.
And so, but I'm like, wow, this is blowing me away that these younger guys are getting it, because I think they're getting the education in college campuses that was not given when I was in my undergraduate
Sorry about that.
career. No, that's fine. Kids and puppies are welcome on the show. There's always things happen in the background, but it's really so I know that as crazy as the world seems right now, there change is happening. And I think it's happening really fast. Actually, the last couple of years, is as gnarly as it feels right now to be a human.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see changes, honestly, but and I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm just, being uh, if the numbers of black men killed by or black people
Mhm,
killed by or unarmed black people killed by police aren't really going down. I don't, for me,
mhm,
as a black person in America, I don't see changes. If we can't
mhm,
move freely and move through the world unmolested, just for existing, I don't know if I would describe that as change. If we're legalizing marijuana, but we have people that are disproportionately affected by nonviolent drug crime still incarcerated when that drug is now legal. I think that's problematic. I think um, I don't think it's okay for us to release Netflix documentaries about crack, and in what's in that documentary is um, you know white people use crack at a 3-to-1 ratio, and it was pinned on black people as like being crackheads, right? I think that's problematic to me. So I
right.
don't know. Progress is not only equality but equity, right?
Mhm.
um, so you know
I
I,
guess.
I think I think there's an attempt to move in the right direction, but I think it can't be has to be borne out in the results. And I think the notion that to for progress to come, it has to be incremental. I think that's wrong. I think that you don't you don't. I think the decision has to be made first that we're going to change, and then you enact the thing, right? So Obama decided that we were going to. I want to make the Affordable Care Act, and he pushed it through, right? So now we have some form of almost universal health care for citizens, where there's a government option, right?
Mhm,
Now, how it's the incremental part is how it is implemented, but it existing, right, and the mandate for it to exist, that was a decision, right? And I think
mhm,
until America makes a decision to treat people better, it makes a decision to reform its justice system and say that is no longer allowed. Right? We're going to focus on restorative justice and not punitive justice. Until America makes that decision, then I can't necessarily get on board with saying that progress is being made. I think it is you decide,
mhm,
you go and act the same way you go to the gym, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, you don't lose 20 pounds in a day, but like you made the decision, I'm going to work at this until I achieve this goal, right?
yeah.
But the decision is I'm going to be in the gym at X time and I'm going to show up and do the work. I don't think America has made the decision to show up and do the work. There are some people that are doing the work still, but as a whole, from the decision makers that are in office, we still have people saying the election was stolen, right? So I don't know that the decision to do the work on the part of the American government has been made.
I agree with everything you're saying. And I would add that, it hasn't, the decision has been made probably by half of Americans, right? But it's not a unanimous decision. I was just talking to my mom the other day, yesterday, I think she's like 75 million people. Like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? Like, what are they thinking kind of thing, And that are supporting this clearly racist ideology. If you cannot, during a presidential debate of all times, denounce white supremacy, what is going through your mind? What is going through your mind? Like that for me, I was like, okay, like I am just done. Like I'm just done. This is a circus. Like I can't, this is like ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't under, my psychologist brain is spinning even now. Like I can't even make sense of this. And I also see why some people are still supporting him and voting for him, because they'll say, I don't like that part, but they don't realize they don't have the same value to the significance of that part, right? And so then you see this other side that's like, okay, well, it actually more aligns with me. Like it more aligns with what I want for my family or my job or my profession or whatever else, instead of looking more humanistically. But also the reason why I say I think change is happening really fast is because I'm big into astrology and I look at all the different things and all the different everything that's going on. And it's like, we are moving into the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is the humanitarian sign. It is the
Mhm.
equality sign. Celebrities, you're in LA, like they've kind of been knocked off their pedestal a bit. Hollywood kind of just got taken out with movie theaters shutting down and all these things. I mean, there's still projects happening and people are still putting out shows, of course, and Netflix and all that, but it's not the former glory that it once was. There's
Right.
one thing. So that's one level where the playing field is getting a little more leveled, and people just don't really care. They're angry with celebrities. They don't really care what celebrities have to say anymore for the most part. There's that. And then also, just even me as a woman, I noticed since the Me Too movement, like things have shifted a bit. I mean, I don't get sexually harassed nearly as much as I used to. There, for me as a woman, there's been a dramatic difference in the last couple of years based on, my experience the last 40 years, let's say.
Right.
And I was going to college in the 90s, the late 90s, and it was a very different world. Even in my high school, you could either be smart or pretty. You're not allowed to really be both. And so I was both, and I didn't have a lot of female friends because of that. You know what I mean? And so there's just certain things that have shifted, that for me have opened up more space for women. And so I'm noticing incremental progress. There is incremental progress, and I think the incremental, it's hard to notice. And I hear what you're saying about the statistics and all of that has not shifted, but the awareness, right? And so that is
Mhm.
shift. It's like more awareness now. It's like we're getting this information out, and there's second order change. So there's surface level change, and then there's second order change. And so it's like, oh, let's I worked at the school district for 10 years, so I know how they like to do certain little things to make it look like they're changed and their numbers are good, so that they get more funding, and then they can hire more people, and then we get higher caseloads and we do less quality work. And like, I know how these systems work, right? um,
Right.
Not to say that we weren't doing good work and the heart was in the right place. It was just, you get caught up into a system and you can't really work the way that you want to work. And so I feel like those numbers aren't always the measure either. It's like it's kind of like in my PhD, it's qualitative or quantitative research. Both are important. We can't prioritize one or the other. There's the lived experience, the quality, the qualitative, and the numbers, the data, can it be replicated? How many people were in the study? That's the quantitative, and one's masculine, one's more feminine. And so the incremental change is the masculine. It's just plugging away, very linear. And then
Mhm.
the shift that happens in the hearts and minds, and like what you're speaking to, the decision, it's like one day you're tired of being 70 pounds overweight and you are no longer eating donuts, and you are just like, that's it. You're
Mhm.
doing it. And so I think America is coming to terms with that right now. And of course, now we're having this Pluto return. This is the astrological piece of it. This Pluto return, Pluto is coming back. It has not been in this into this place since the beginning of America.
Mm.
And so people are like, is America going to survive, or is it going to go away? Like, it's not going to survive this. And there's aspects of Revolutionary War and all of this stuff coming up. And, it's some crazy power struggles right now. And the old system is crumbling and it's dying, and it's starting to take hits harder and faster now than I've ever seen in my 43 years. And
Right.
so that when I speak about seeing like rapid change, that's what I'm talking about. And I agree with you and see what you're saying as far as like this hasn't really changed, that hasn't shifted. And yeah, there's a lot of bullshit still happening out there. And I also see big shifts in my small circles, my communities, my friend groups, my colleagues, these sorts of things that are different from maybe like 20 years ago.
Absolutely. That's important. That's very, very important.
Yeah. But I mean, there's still anger, and so like going back to this righteous anger piece, I feel like to face these injustices, to face oppression, to face some of these things, whether you're LGBT, you're a woman, you're a black man, a black woman, a Latina woman, a Latino man, whoever you are, all those intersections, that intersectionality, like those little, or if you're poor or whatever else that you've been through, this adversity that this system was not built for you, whatever that is, there's anger that comes up. And then when you're not allowed to express it, where does that go? I mean, where has that gone for you in your personal life?
For me,
hmm How do you channel that? How do you transmute it? How do you move it through so that you can speak and write these beautiful words that I know you to speak and write since I've known you?
well, that's part of how I channel it. I also just like I'm very active, so I get it out a lot on through being active through sports.
hmm
Um, that's really, excuse me, that's really my outlet, being active and um, yeah, I think that's the best for me. That's the best thing is like sports or writing. Those are the best ways to get out my anger. But I also don't. I wouldn't say that it's a resignation, but I also I think I think people of other races are far more optimistic and believe almost to a fault in America far more than Black people ever will, until there's like a material change. And so for me, if I saw a dog being a dog, I wouldn't get mad at the dog, right? That's insanity, because a person or a thing is only capable of being what it is, and so it's hard for me to be upset with America when America is only being what it's always been, right? This country was founded, um, whether you believe it or not, the country was founded with racist principles. To have in your founding text that a person that is looks like me is only 3/5 of a human being, that you can't run from that,
hmm
right? So, and my manhood as it relates to my rights in this country are, can be revoked based on, an amendment. If they decide they don't like this amendment anymore, that you can take that back, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really get it's not. I don't look at when videos happen that show, police violence. I don't look at those things anymore. And I also just don't engage with. I don't engage with it because it's par for the course. and to keep it, it's like being in an abusive relationship. Like I'm not going to. I don't want to. If I don't want to be a part of that, like at a certain point, you have to leave it, or you're choosing to be abused.
Hmm. So you're finding your healing spaces,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
absolutely.
If you're not going to engage with this thing, then you got to find another place to be, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I still do my part. I'm not one who says I don't vote. I understand the value. I understand the system is workable. I understand the things you can do, but I'm also not going to be upset when America does what America does. Like, it's just not.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. It makes sense. And maybe that is the America that won't survive. Maybe,
I really hope not.
yeah, maybe this Pluto return will stomp out that, those energetic, those racist principles. I know in my last, not my last episode, but a couple episodes back, I talk about a new model for relationships, and I talk about marriage and how
Hmm.
the institution of marriage was really just started so that a man could own a woman,
Yeah.
and in return for his owning her, then she got room and board and food, and but she got to cook it for him too, and give him the babies and all of this stuff. And that energetic beginning of this institution puts a bad taste in my mouth, and then we romanticize it and we say, oh, it's about this, but that's how it started. And maybe you can recreate it and change the origins of it and do your own thing with it, and then it seems to make sense. But it's hard for me to want to participate in that system as it began, because
I
it feels
mean,
like
I,
still.
I feel like more white women should feel that way. I think one of the things that is funny to me about the whole situation is that 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump, and if anybody should be on the front lines of black people, it's white women who didn't have the right to vote for however long,
100%.
right? They're signing up for their own oppression. And
I
it's,
have
but
the same question. Like, it's a no-brainer for me, but it's also, I understand women, and we've been socialized to default to a man, and they figure if they vote for the white man next to them that they're married to, or their father, or whoever that person is, then they're going to be safe, right? So they're
Mhm.
voting against they're voting, they think that they're voting for their team or whatnot. That's the only way I can
Yeah,
make sense of it.
I get it.
I, I don't know, but I hear you. And that's, Gloria Steinem was big on that. And I've had criticism thrown at me for my feminist ideals or whatever. And did you know that the first feminists didn't allow black women to, didn't include black women? I said, of course I know that. And also the feminism that I was brought up on was the feminism of Gloria Steinem. It was the feminism of, in my master's, I was educated on the work primarily of Dr. Bell Hooks, who's Black lesbian, writer, Harvard professor. And that's where feminism came from in my mind. That's what I was at. You have Bell Hooks there in your library.
Yeah, right now. Right now.
Oh, you're reading it right now? Oh, that's cool. Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Wow. I have not read that book. You'll have to let me know what you think.
Oh man, it's amazing.
Uh-huh. Okay,
It,
cool.
it's great. You should
I mean,
absolutely check it out.
she taught me a lot. We watched a lot of videos of hers in my master's program, and that was back in 2002 to 2005. That was a long time ago now, and so for me now, we have BLM, and I've got white women on Facebook yelling at me like, did you watch this documentary? Did you know about this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, did you? Like,
Right.
I've been learning about this stuff for 20 years. I've been working in social services primarily with people of color because I speak Spanish, and immigrants, because I've worked in San Diego and also Phoenix. And I'm like, man, like, people are just, if we could all just look in the mirror and look back at ourselves and be like, okay, what am I doing? Rather than, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like hot potato. Nope, I'm not going to deal with it. Let me throw it at you and project it at you. But if we all just, like, even with pain, like, healed our own pain, took care of our own anger, doesn't mean that we shove it down or we don't express it, but how do we express it in a way that it's for us, so that it doesn't burn us up inside, so it doesn't create cancer in us. And then after we let it move through us, like you're talking about, sports, basketball, like channeling it, then how do we refine it and put it to good use so that people can actually hear it? And so I know you've written some beautiful things for Huffington Post in the past. I think your first article um, went live when we were hanging out, and it was inspiring, to see. And then I've read some of your other things too, like criticisms of Trump and kind of the, other things about mental health and bringing up that mental health conversation, that I really appreciate your openness about that.
Hmm.
And this is all relevant, important stuff, and when you go through these experiences, I think it's important that we open up our throat chakras and we speak. And my friend Nikita's on, I didn't see her comment earlier, but she said, ruthless, speak it, sis. So yeah, so it's like, speak, speak, but also if you want it to land, we have to speak it in a way that people can hear it. And shame never changes anyone. It just buries it deeper. It just buries it deeper and puts it back into hiding. And so whether it's shaming men or shaming white people or shaming, Trump supporters or whatever else, that's not gonna, I mean, if you feel like you have to do it, go ahead and do it, but it's not gonna change. It's not gonna change them. You know what I mean? It's more so for your own self to get to vent about your own anger, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that to a certain degree, but I think there is for whatever reason, there is a level of shamelessness that is associated with that exists, especially in the South, with people that bring these Confederate flags out. Um, there is again an unwillingness to be um, honest about the origins of certain things, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, um, you didn't enslave me, but it is undeniable that the reason that whether you are, whether you are an immigrant post slavery or you have been here since 17, your family's been here since 1776, the success and the freedoms and the privileges of white people um, are based upon the structural foundations of this country, right? And so when we talk about not, one, there's the lack of acknowledgement on that part and the lack of ownership. Like no one's calling you a slave owner, but there's a part of culpability that you play in a part of relinquishing certain privileges and freedoms, or privileges and freedoms that come with what this country was founded upon. That's just that's just something that people have to own, right? In the same way that like my dad being who he was, I had to live a public life before I ever wanted to live a public life. Like that's not something like I didn't do anything to have to do that, but like that's what comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is, and I think the lack of willingness on the part of white people in America to do that is what's really frustrating.
I hear you. And it's really about, and here's my theory on that, by the way, because I've thought about this a lot. And I put everything in the context of trauma and being a family systems therapist, because it's about systemic change. I'm trained in how to change family systems, and thus that same theories extend to human families, right, and
Mhm.
global systems. And I believe that if you have not done that work in your family of origin, so even if you are in a position of privilege, right, and you feel like you could stand up against whatever it is, your peers or your coworkers or whoever, because in order to draw a line, and you're saying there's a certain level of shamelessness, and I agree with you. It goes back to entitlement, it goes back to supremacy, all these things, and there needs to be a boundary set, just a very clear, like just like you're squashing a mosquito kind of boundary. It's like, no, we're not doing that here. It doesn't
Mhm.
need to be a big production and, emotional thing or whatever. But people are not willing to do that unless they've done that work with their families of origin. So unless you could stand up to your dad, to your mom, to your sister, to your aunt, that's like telling you all this nonsense or whatever else, or oppressing you in some way. And it happens in every family. Every family is dysfunctional. It's just different levels of dysfunction. And so
Mhm.
unless you've been able to do that, you're not going to be able to do that in a broader cultural setting either, or in a work setting or whatever else. It doesn't work that way. And so the work again goes to having to look in the mirror and start to have those conversations with your family of origin. Then you're free, and now you can start to do it in other places. And I've gone through so many different levels of this. I was sexually abused as a young girl, so I had to speak up and speak out about that. I was trained by social workers and therapists to keep speaking up. That was my freedom. Truth is my freedom, right? So I was coached at a very young age to keep doing that. And every time I did it, I'm getting into trouble because people don't like what I have to say, and it's shaking up systems, right? But that's been my thing. It saved me when I was a young girl, so I continue to do it, and I'm more comfortable with it than a lot of people because they didn't have to do their training didn't start at age 8. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I've been doing it for a long time. Now I'm even the show, and thank you for being here with me and talking about these things, but being on the show and having it be public and having these really deep conversations, these very intimate conversations publicly. There's so much. I've gotten hate mail, I've gotten criticism. Most of my family has unfriended me from social media because they don't like what I have to say. I'm talking about sensitive topics, and yet I feel like that's something I'm willing to deal with. And I have to find my people that do stand by me and that do provide that sense of community and family in order to do that. So I have compassion for people who aren't, I'm not saying it's okay that they're doing that, but I see why and how they're
Yeah,
not.
no, I absolutely understand why. Yeah, no, I'm not naive to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm with you. I wish it were different. And this is why I do the work that I do. I feel when I speak out, I'm giving other women in particular, which is my group that I represent, permission to do the
Mhm.
same. And related to that too, I want to just address in case there's any women watching this, the allegations made against your dad, and that, he had some allegations during the Me Too movement. It's not important to me to go into it because I feel like that's the way that needs to happen is not public shaming, but like, let's really do some research, let's investigate, let's like see what's going on. And I know the news came to your door, and I saw you on the news talking about it, and I really appreciated your response, which was, after everything that my dad has done for all people,
Mhm.
to have him not, or to have these allegations automatically believed. Like I watched it several times, the video, and I really appreciate your choice of words, but like, to have the allegations automatically believed is disheartening
Yeah.
because of how he fought for everyone. And then you said also, women, of course women are to be believed. And
Mhm.
that was you said all of it, in just a couple sentences. And I think that's really, really important, because you're not making a determination. You're not saying you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, but let's look at the system. Let's look at the context. Let's look at the different layers here,
Right. And I
and what's
think,
happening.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, not happy to, but I don't have a problem just because like I've lived it. I've lived it for the past every time I have to talk or,
Hmm.
it's something that comes up. But I think my issue fundamentally with everything that played out and how it played out is that you have a company like BuzzFeed that um, obviously their bread and butter is like their quizzes and their tests, and as you know, digital quote unquote news is starting to, you know, dwindle. The revenue in that place is, starting to dwindle. They're trying to pivot to actually doing real news and stories of whatever nature. The barrier, the the barrier to the barrier for what's able to be printed is not um, isn't the highest. And I think if they had actually done real digging, they would have, would have come out that the person, their source, initial source that led them to the thing was someone that was fired by my father, and he was fired because he wasn't doing his job. And the two people, and the woman who was accusing my father was also fired because she wasn't doing her job. And the two people created so much discord within the district that the UAW, United Auto Workers, threatened not to endorse my father after having endorsed him for, however, 40 odd years straight. They threatened to, like, if they're not fired, we're not going to, you know, endorse you for Congress next time because they're not doing what they're supposed to do and representing the people of your district. That's number one. Number two, it's not to say that my father and that woman did not have a relationship that was inappropriate, but that it was not consensual is
That's
not the truth. And to go even further, um, it is I will acknowledge that my father putting himself in that position is led to the circumstance that he found himself in. But the money she was paid was because she only got that money because she threatened to say what she ultimately came out and said. So the reason that she threatened to say, well, if you fire me, I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, you know, normally when you're fired, you don't get your entire salary, like another year's worth of salary. And that is what was agreed upon because she threatened to say X, Y, and Z. Um, and so I think that's something that was never talked about. It wasn't ever addressed. And it's also my father had dementia. So him even um, remembering the details of the circumstance, it was a
mm,
very predator, from my perspective, it
yeah.
was a very predatory thing on the part of the woman whose name I will address at in my book, and Isaac Isaac Robinson, who's since passed away. So I feel comfortable saying, it's something that they were privy to, so they did it because he's not going to remember. He's not able to defend himself in the media because I don't, you know. So yeah, I mean, again, I think that women are to be taken seriously. Women are to be believed, but I think that, and I also know that in 99% of cases, women aren't lying. So I'm not. It's not something that like any man true like if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, or rather not doing what you're not supposed to be doing, it's not something you have to worry about.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and I have a little bit of experience on both sides of something like this as well, and so I can have compassion, right? Obviously, I've been, and most of us have probably had situations where we could have been in either role, right? We could have been on either side of something like this, and I um I had I was dating a man who I found out shortly after we started dating that had a girlfriend and that he was living with her. And when I reached out to her to make contact and find out like if that was actually true or not, and if so, like I am a high integrity person, I'm not going to be in that sort of situation. He got very angry because she got angry and kicked him out, right? So now he's lost his living situation.
mhm.
Um, and then she gave me information about maybe 5 or 6 other women. It turns out this man was quite a con artist and probably a psychopath, to be honest. Which then for me, I'm like, I'm a therapist. How could this happen? But again, it's like, oh, they're really good, like they're really, really good. And the first sign that I saw, I like went into action. I didn't try to like, you know, brush it away or whatever else. So it's like, but it was really hard for me. And then he knew that being a therapist, if he created a story that he was a client of mine that I had sex with, that I could lose my license. So he was going for the jugular, right? And so
Wow.
he emailed all of my Instagram followers. He emailed my place of business, like all of these places, and with this made up lie, the story to damage my reputation. I was pleasantly surprised to see that nobody really believed him anyway because of my integrity, my reputation. As I've done a good job with that. So everybody's like, no. Or then a couple of people like reached out to warn me, like, there's some guy saying some weird stuff, and I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And even my place of business didn't even mention it to me because they just clearly thought that he was Looney Tunes or whatnot. But I had to get a hire lawyer, get a restraining order. Cease and desist letters went out. I had to I was at the courthouse several times that year because he threatened to kill me and
What?
all of this other stuff. And it's some serious stuff that happens. And I'm not even a public figure. I mean, I am because I have a business, but and I have a public, listing and a public Instagram page and that sort of thing. But it's like anytime you put yourself out in a position of any kind of public space, integrity as a professional, you know, it's this position of integrity, you're at risk. And it's really like
Mhm.
having to protect yourself. And I would hope that people would look at all of the contextual variables and not jump to conclusions. And interestingly enough, I appreciate you saying that 99% of the time, you know, women are telling the truth. And I also know there's times when especially white women have lied on black men, you know, and that's a thing. And that's a thing that, you know, gets thrown at me a lot. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, because I feel like, especially when you're dealing with famous athletes and professional athletes, they're the ones that have the power. You know, when you are the celebrity, when you are the money, you have all the money, you have the status, like you're in the power position regardless of race. Race is a piece of it for sure, but you
Mhm.
have to weigh out all of these things, right? And and when I called the Carlsbad police to say this man had threatened to kill me and he happened to be a black man, um, they're like, okay, can you email us? And I was like, really? He's like on his way down here right now. I'm like closing all the windows and locking the doors. I had to send my kids away, you know, all of this stuff. And I'm like, email you? Okay. And then they never did anything about it. And I
Terrible. See,
sent them
that's the problem, and that's what I mean. Women aren't to
mhm,
be believed and taken seriously. Like that
yeah.
is that's problematic to me.
Well, and so when people are like, "Oh, it's always the, you know, the white women lying on a black man or whatever else," I'm like, well, when a white woman is in danger, she is not always the most protected one in society, because there was a patriarchal system in place here that did not protect me, and I had to take matters into my own hands. And my, you know, ex-boyfriend is a jujitsu champion, and luckily like came and got me, and I stayed with him for the weekend to just until my nervous system could calm down, right?
Mhm.
And I had to kind of like put this together in my head, like what's some vigilante justice if it needs to get here, because the police are not going to do anything. And it was interesting because and there's this little part of me too that was a little bit like, it's weird to say, but a little bit like proud of the police department for not like jumping on a black man, you know what I mean? Like not like they were neglectful for sure, but they also didn't go the other way and like,
Oh yeah,
oh,
go.
we're gonna kill him kind of thing, like that like you see in the movies, or that, you know, there's this racist like story and trope that goes around partly because of Emmett Till. And so, you know, the amount of people are like, have you heard about Emmett Till? Yes, of course. Of course. I've read that story. And in that story, I don't, my heart doesn't identify with the white woman. My heart identifies as the mother, because I have
Mhm.
two children, you know? And so when I learned about that story, it was the tears were a mother's tears, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so we, we have to look at all of the different variables with these situations, and really assess them, I think, on a case by case basis, and try to stay away from like this and that. Know that these things happen, but also like how deeply can we look at this situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think your situation is an outlier because when from what I know, your
Mhm.
situation is an outlier situation, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. But I also know about as recently as like last year, a black athlete literally lost everything and he just got released from prison. There's one that just got released from prison after a white woman came forth and said she was lying. And then another athlete is currently got last year got sentenced to prison um, after it was even though there was no evidence of rape. The woman didn't like the after the rape kit, there was no evidence of rape. um, I think if I'm not mistaken, the girl, I think he was playing, he's a young man too. He's like 19, 20.
Mhm.
He's gonna lose his whole, playing career, future, all those things because of, false allegations. The woman said that I think they didn't even kiss or something like that. But it's everyone from black people to white people are all advocating on this kid's behalf, and it's in Kentucky somewhere. Um, about that. So I think it's just a matter of, again, to my earlier point, it's about the things that we allow to
Mhm.
come into our consciousness and allow to come into our space. Um, and which is why I ignore so many things that happen in America, and I kind of really just focus on, myself, my tribe, and where I would like us to be, 10 years from now and, 100 years from now when I'm gone. Right? That's kind of where my focus lies. And I try, as one thing I learned with my own situation is that you never, like, you think you are so far removed from, ending up in prison, or you wonder how people end up in prison. And it's literally a thing that, like, anything, it's not even things that the things that land you there are sometimes the things that you don't even plan for.
Yep.
Right? It's things that, like, how did that happen? I don't even understand what's going on, and how did I end up in this place or talking to this person. It's just it's stuff like that that seems innocent, seems innocuous, that ends up putting you in a position to where, like, you're wondering if you're going to have your freedom, if you're going to have a life. And again, not to I don't mean that to say or discredit or take away from your experience. I just think that, well, not I think that I'm very painfully aware, of, the situations that occur, um, with young Black men in this country. And that's not to say that, like, we haven't made progress, because in that regard, I would say that we absolutely have. Um, yeah, that's just.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I'll send you links on those. 'Cause I think
Yeah.
those are things that, like, I don't know that if they were super publicized, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that, like, for, especially our community, we're very aware of, and we've talked about, and, are concerned with.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Absolutely.
Are there
And
questions from the audience, or what's is any of that, or no?
yeah, we're not getting any questions. No, no questions. I think, I used to have this show on Instagram, and
Hmm.
because of the stealing of data and all of that stuff, I've kind of been moving my business elsewhere and trying to
Hmm.
make that migration. So I think not everybody comes over here live. I think they sometimes forget, especially if I'm not doing a good job of promoting it. But I also, this will be on evergreen on my YouTube for people to go and check out later. So usually what I do is I send out a newsletter,
Okay.
a link to this episode. So no questions right now. Um, but yeah, wow, that would be great. Well, if anybody is watching live, I can't really, that's the thing with YouTube, I can't really tell if folks are there unless they comment. So if anybody is watching and you have a question for us, please type it in there. Let us know. This is a great opportunity, I think, just to talk about these things on a really impactful day.
Absolutely.
Really
Absolutely.
impactful day. And Capricorn, it's interesting too, knowing how close the relationship was between your dad and MLK Jr., because your dad being a Taurus and MLK being a Capricorn, because those are both earth signs and
Hmm.
very compatible earth signs. And really, Taurus does have that drive and that persistence, and Capricorn does too. They're all about, creating work and creating change and having a purpose, and that's a big purpose. So I'm sure that was a really um, destined partnership
Yeah, absolutely.
for them to be born under those certain stars and
What's
do what.
wild is they're only 4 months apart.
Really?
Like, they're born the same year, just 4 months apart.
Wow.
Very, very wild.
Yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, I think it's already 8:18, 8:18. We've been going for over an hour. I said it was about an hour. I'd take about an hour of your time, and we went over. So I certainly appreciate your
Of
passion, your
course.
patience, just engaging in these conversations that I think can be difficult for people to have, and sometimes difficult for people to hear. And I so appreciate you from day one, really being able to be in these types of conversations with me.
Absolutely. I think the last thing I would say, before we go, is that I think it's important for, um, everyone to be accountable, and
Mm,
hold themselves accountable, whether that is, for me, I guess I would say, before you focus on what other people are doing, hold yourself accountable for your behaviors. And we all fall short, of, whether that's the things that we say we want to be about, or, we set a goal and we don't achieve it. But the most important critical thing is holding yourself accountable, and figuring out, how you move forward, how you find a path forward, and how do you get closer and closer to meeting your own standard. And as long as you're able to do that, and be aware, right? Aside from that, being aware of, like, yeah, if I say I'm about respect, if I say I'm about equality, that equality can't just be for a certain group of people.
Yeah.
Equality has to be for everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and understand, like, right, when I talk to a woman, there are certain, not in a belittling way, but I think there are things that, like, you have to understand that, like, women experience certain things. So when they react to, um, if they react to something that I say, I can't be mad at that. I have to understand that women are carrying more than a man does. In the same way that, like, when Black people may react, or a Latino person may react to a certain statement, it's because on a day-to-day basis we're carrying more. We're
Mhm.
we're we're worried about more. We're worried about certain things, and I think once people start to understand that, like, the statement, like, "I don't see color," is a crock of shit. Once
Mhm.
you understand that,
Have to be able to
once
see color.
you say what? You
You have to
absolutely
see
see color.
his
You can't,
color.
like, yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Once you're able to get to that point, accountability, you understand that everyone is dealing with different things, we'll all be in a better place, and we'll be able to move forward in a more productive way.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And I love the piece of accountability, responsibility. I've definitely seen you model that throughout our friendship. You embody that. I know these aren't just words, that you live those principles. And
I try my best.
yeah, I recognize that you, and I appreciate that about you. And and I also would say that I would add to that, again, being a therapist and knowing that this is the spiritual sexual empowerment show.
Hmm.
um, Cultural oppression is internalized, at least for women, according to research by Gina Ogden, in the erotic anatomy. And so a woman's inability to orgasm or inability to enjoy sexual pleasure does have to do with street harassment. It does have to
Hmm.
do with being oppressed. It does have to do, and I don't know if there's research out there. I haven't seen any on people of color and how that works with your erotic anatomy, but your libido, your second chakra, money, power, sex, it's your little literal power in the world. It's your empowerment. And so and that's a big piece of why I talk about empowerment on the show, and sex, because they're so related. It's your power center of your body. And to know that, healing that, maybe you weren't responsible for what happened to you, but you are
Hmm.
responsible, like you said, to have the awareness if you were the perpetrator or the victim. And you're also responsible to do your own healing, because nobody's going to do it for you.
Correct.
And so and I'm speaking mainly to the women right now, that I speak to every week on this show, but also the men.
I would love to come on and talk about that at another time.
Yeah. Oh, great.
About how men are we're something else when it comes to women's sexuality.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that, and I'm sure there's lots of other different spin-off topics we could go from there too, and as it relates to race and everything as well. But healing from that is our own responsibility. So it's like our awareness of that, and then doing the work to heal it. And it's not fair that we have to spend money to go to therapists, or we have to spend money to do these personal development things or whatever, because of the world the way it is. But also, that's our responsibility. And the other side of that is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's so liberating. And I can speak from experience, like, it's so juicy. It's so amazing, and it's worth it. And
Absolutely.
you end up with an even bigger, brighter, more amazing skills, which in therapeutic terms, post-traumatic growth. But
Hmm.
more amazing skills, more amazing sex life, all of that, because of the work that you did with the shit that you were thrown. And I
Yeah,
just really hope that that's the case for all oppressed groups, and that we all get there to
absolutely.
that other side, and just have a even better superhuman existence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, definitely look forward to talking to you again, and I thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Anything that you want to like promote besides you said you have a book coming up or anything else that you want to mention or ways that people can get in touch with you? I don't know if you're kind of like flying below the radar now, kind of being
Yeah, I'm flying below the radar. I'm flying below the radar right now until
okay.
we announce the book deal and everything. So
Okay. Sounds
um
good.
yeah, I'm just hanging out. I'm
Just a guy.
just a guy right now.
Yeah, you need that. You need that peace and that quiet, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, then I'll just direct anybody that's watching this right now to my newsletter, natashaedwina.com, and stay tuned there because there could be a part 2 to this in the near future.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I
All right.
appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here. Happy MLK Day. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world, the work that your family's doing, has done in the world. Just a lot of gratitude coming from this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Talk to you